late last week, President Obama gave an address at American University where he defended the Iran deal, and he defended the specifics of it, and he explained why this was essential, why this was the smartest course from a security perspective, from a diplomatic perspective. But I think in some respects, most importantly, he explained the context for this deal. And a big part of the context of this deal in terms of our modern history, there's a specific history with Iran, obviously, that goes back to the revolution, the hostage crisis, our supporting Saddam Hussein during the Iran-Iraq War. Frankly, actually, arguably, it really goes back to the 1950s and us backing the overthrow of Mossadegh. But in the modern context, this is about where you were with the invasion of Iraq and what you learned from that and what you didn't. And I think as President Obama's full legacy comes further into sort of sight, we could see that he learned some bad lessons from the invasion of Iraq in some respects, which is that, part of his national security strategy has been outsourcing military policy to things like drones and other sort of more quote-unquote light footprint tactics that are less messy from a U.S. perspective, that are less politically problematic from a U.S. domestic perspective, but obviously are not governed fully by international law, fully by domestic law, and have had serious consequences for civilian populations in Yemen, Pakistan, and many other places. On the other hand, what President Obama has done with Iran, with Cuba, and in several other areas is really attempted to renew actual diplomacy in U.S. foreign policy making. And to the extent to which that's a success, it's of enormous credit to him. And as I say, and I've said many times, I think this Iran deal could really go down as really one of the great efforts of his presidency. And he explained here, I'm going to take a couple minutes from the speech at American University, the thinking that led him towards this deal and how he's differentiating himself from the hawks who are attempting to fill the airwaves of propaganda against this deal, just as they did when they led us to the invasion of Iraq. This is strong talk from President Obama, and right talk. Let's take a listen.
Tens of millions of dollars in advertising. And if the rhetoric in these ads and the accompanying commentary sounds familiar, it should. For many of the same people who argued for the war in Iraq are now making the case against the Iran nuclear deal. Now, when I ran for president 8 years ago as a candidate who had opposed the decision to go to war in Iraq, I said that America didn't just have to end that war. We had to end the mindset that got us there in the first place. It was a mindset characterized by a preference for military action over diplomacy. A mindset that put a premium on unilateral U.S. action over the painstaking work of building international consensus. A mindset that exaggerated threats beyond what the intelligence supported. Leaders did not level with the American people about the costs of war, insisting that we could easily impose our will on a part of the world with a profoundly different culture and history. And of course, those calling for war labeled themselves strong and decisive, while dismissing those who disagreed as weak, even appeasers of a malevolent adversary. More than a decade later, we still live with the consequences of the decision to invade Iraq. Our troops achieved every mission they were given, but thousands of lives were lost, tens of thousands wounded. That doesn't count the lives lost among Iraqis. Nearly $1 trillion was spent. Today, Iraq remains gripped by sectarian conflict, and the emergence of al-Qaeda in Iraq has now evolved into ISIL. And ironically, the single greatest beneficiary in the region of that war was the Islamic Republic of Iran, which saw its strategic position strengthened by the removal of its long-standing enemy, Saddam Hussein. I raise this recent history because now more than ever, we need clear thinking in our foreign policy. And I raise this history because it bears directly on how we respond to the Iranian nuclear program. That program has been around for decades.
Okay, so look, President Obama is laying this out exactly correctly. The reality is that you had a out-of-control, far-right, ideological, extremist wing that took over not only the Republican Party, but the foreign policy-making establishment. And we know that the Democrats went along with it. Everybody in the mainstream, people wanted the currency of backing the invasion of Iraq. And not only was it unbelievably unethical, stupid, wrong, it was a complete strategic non sequitur which empowered Iran. Now, the relationship with Iran is a lot more complex than many people here want to acknowledge, and obviously Iran commits numerous human rights abuses domestically. It says things that are offensive about Israel, about America. But fundamentally, we are aligned with Iran on ISIL. We're aligned with Iran on stabilizing Iraq. And let's also be real about what other things Iran says about us. Iran will say that we're an imperialist power. Well, frankly, we are. Iran will, criticize us for backing Saddam while he was using chemical weapons against them. And we did. And we'll get to Chuck Schumer in a moment. Some of Iran's fears about inspections on its program have to do with the fact that they've had a nuclear scientist murdered on the street there by teams of assassins, most likely sent from Israel, but I'm sure with tacit U.S. backing.